Question 1. Imagine you meet someone in an elevator. You have 1 minute to pitch your campaign. What would you say? As the founder of a local tutoring center, I've had the opportunity to work with many MCPS students, and it pains me to say that there is very little learning that's going on in our school system today. I believe it's the result of the misguided policies that the Board of Education has been setting for years now, such as eliminating midterms and finals, or, for example, creating a ridiculous grading system that discourages hard work. As someone who started a nonprofit for underprivileged children to help them escape the vicious cycle of poverty, I understand the importance of education. I believe education can single-handedly bring people out of poverty. If elected, I'm going to make sure that every student is prepared for the real world after graduating. Question 2. How should teachers evaluate student performance during this online learning period? For example, should they use a pass-fail or grading system? So the Board of Education has announced that they will be doing a pass-fail grading system for the fourth quarter. And unfortunately, I can't disagree more with that decision. Going with a pass-fail grading system is going to discourage students from showing up to these online sessions. I'm sure that the attendance already is a lot lower than it was with in-person classes. Now students just need to show up enough to make sure they get at least a D to pass that class. Additionally, a lot of students were hoping to improve their grades for college with this semester, especially a lot of juniors. So that opportunity is being taken away from them, and despite the fact that they were working very hard in the beginning of the semester. So again, this goes back to the misguided policies that the Board of Education has been setting. I genuinely believe with some of these policies, they probably had good intentions. They probably wanted to make it a little easier and a little bit less stress for the students during this difficult time. But the way to go about that isn't to go pass-fail and encourage students to not show up at all. The way to do that is to make sure that the classes are being held on a regular basis and students can focus on schoolwork and make sure they're keeping up with their studies. And that's going to make their lives easier now and in the future. Overall, the grading system that the Board of Education has implemented is a disaster. They've eliminated midterms and finals. I've had students come to me now in college and say, how do I study for finals exams in college, which is the bulk of my grade? They never had the opportunity to build study skills for finals and midterms in MCPS, so as a result, they're now suffering. Not to mention the grading system that goes, if you get an A in the first quarter, you're basically guaranteed an A for the semester, serves the exact opposite of what it should be doing. Again, working with many MCPS students in my role as the owner of a tutoring center, I can't tell you how many students that I worked with directly that have said, oh, I already got an A this quarter, so I don't really need to try that hard this next quarter because I'm guaranteed basically an A for the semester. I'm just going to mail it in. Is that the kind of message that we want to send our students? In real life, if you work hard before lunch, can you just mail it in after lunch? Not only that, but I think that has led to a lot of grade inflation. So now more students than ever are getting A's. And again, that is a disadvantage to the students that are willing to work the hardest. For all those reasons, I feel like we can do better. Question 3. The estimated cost of implementing the Kerwin Report recommendations statewide is $4 billion. Would the increased taxes that would be required to fund those recommendations and the potential economic impact on the local budgets from COVID-19, are there ways to close the achievement gap without increasing the costs? And how would you prioritize the recommendations? So first, let me start by saying that I agree with some parts of the recommendations, but not with the entire report. For example, I believe that supporting free pre-K is a great idea. Studies consistently show that students who start earlier and stay in class longer go further in their educational careers. So I think that is money well spent. However, the price tag of the entire report is just too great. Taxes will go up by thousands for the average family, and I believe that during these trying times, especially, that is just too much for most families. However, there are ways that we can lessen the achievement gap, and I think it starts with addressing the problem. So, when there's very little learning that goes on in schools, which is what's happening now, the parents and the students who can afford it, who have the resources, go to tutoring centers like mine, and we basically supplement their education and make sure that they're getting what they need. But a lot of lower income families who can't afford the cost of tutoring, particularly in many cases immigrant or minority families, they don't have that option. And that's where the achievement gap starts to happen. So the way to fix that is to make sure that our schools are providing a quality education. And unfortunately, the Board of Education has been creating policies that have been watering down the curriculum, the grading system. Kids nowadays don't learn grammar in schools. I bring that up a lot. But that's because that should be one of the first things they learn. If you take a look at the books they're reading, it's grades below their reading level. Just the other day, I saw that in the ninth grade high school summer reading list, they had a book that was on a fourth grade level, and then we wonder why are the reading scores dropping. If you take a look at a lot of other things, the classrooms in many schools are out of control because teachers are afraid to send disrupting students out of the classes. And as a result, the rest of the class suffers. So I think in order to lessen the achievement gap, it has to start with providing a quality education to students in schools. And that can happen if we strengthen the curriculum, make sure that we reinforce classroom behavior, and also make sure that we have a fair grading system that encourages hard work instead of discouraging it. Question 4. We hear a lot about college students becoming overwhelmed by student debt after they graduate. Some have troubles finding jobs that pay enough to get them out of debt quickly. How can the school system help students who are so inclined to prepare for careers in the trades, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, hospitality industry, etc., that don't necessarily require four-year college degrees? So let me first start by saying that as someone who works with a lot of MCPS students and parents, particularly high school students, it is very difficult to tell a student that they're not college ready. You can't just say, Johnny, I don't think you're college material. Maybe you should consider something that's not college related. I think the goal has to be for all MCPS students to be college ready when they graduate and should have the option of going to college if they choose so. Of course, it doesn't mean that that's the right option for everybody. So in that case, I believe it starts with making sure that parents and students have the right information. I do a lot of consultations for juniors and sometimes even seniors in terms of making sure that they're on the right track to go to college. And I can't tell you how many times I hear students choosing majors that they're not necessarily all that interested in, but they're some of the easier majors. For example, entrepreneurship, or for example, Greek mythology. Sure, they may sound a little bit less strenuous than, for example, engineering. But I think if parents and students have the right information, and I'll tell them during my consultations, that look, if that's your dream, then Godspeed, pursue your dreams. But if you're only choosing those majors because you think they're going to be a little easier, then consider, for example, how much you're going to be making after graduation. And parallel to that, we can provide options and say, look, but if you pursue this field instead, let's say, for example, somebody is interested in plumbing, then they can say, well, yes, in that case, instead of graduating with a lot of debt and working in a field that is not related to my major, we can go ahead and they can go into something that's going to pay a lot more without incurring the debt of college. Last but not least, I'll also say that information is one thing, but students should also be given the opportunity to explore those different types of career paths. And the best way to do that, I think, is by allowing MCPS students to partner up with trusted local businesses, for example, like plumbing, and in that case, as an internship, for example, or in a way to get community service, they can explore those careers outside of school and find out, is that the career that they want to pursue after graduation.